The sun had barely cleared the horizon over Fort Bragg, yet the heat already pressed down on the sprawling base, thick and suffocating. Recruits filed into formation on the training ground, their boots scraping against the concrete, voices humming with tired energy and nervous chatter. Sweat streaked their faces, but no one dared break the rigid alignment. Discipline wasn't optional here. It was survival. Private First Class Lena Mercer moved differently than the others. Her posture was perfect, almost robotic, yet there was a subtle fluidity in the way she shifted, the kind that suggested hours of practice beyond what a typical recruit could muster. While the other rookies fumbled with their rifles, struggling to assemble and disassemble them, Lena worked with calm precision, methodically wiping oil from her weapon, inspecting every mechanism, checking every seam. Her movements were quiet but efficient, almost hypnotic to anyone who paused long enough to watch. Whispers floated across the ranks. "Who is she? Why is she so different? She doesn't even seem nervous." Even in a crowd of 100 recruits, Lena seemed alone, a figure of focus and control. She didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge the murmurs. It was as though she existed on a different plane, operating by rules no one else understood. As the recruits drilled under the blazing sun, the sound of engines echoed from the main gate. A convoy of black SUVs, marked with nothing but the American flag and an air of authority, rolled onto the base. Guards snapped to attention as the vehicles pulled up, dust swirling in the heat. The rumble of tires on asphalt seemed louder than the voices of the rookies. General Marcus Hale stepped from the lead SUV, a figure as commanding as he was respected and feared. Every medal, every stripe, every wrinkle told a story of decades of service, campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, missions that few civilians would ever comprehend. Hale had walked battlefields most could only read about in books. Nothing shocked him easily. Yet, as his eyes swept over the assembled recruits, they lingered on Lena Mercer. She was kneeling now, rolling her sleeves up, exposing the faint scars along her forearms. Thin, jagged, almost like the marks of some previous fire or rope burn. Her hands were steady, fingers skilled, tracing the familiar curves of her rifle like it was an extension of herself. Hale's instincts screamed at him. These weren't the hands of a recruit. They were seasoned. They had survived. A flicker of movement caught his eye, something beneath the sleeve. He leaned closer, squinting, and saw it, the trident. Almost invisible, a tattoo etched delicately near her shoulder blade. Only the most elite of the United States Navy SEALs carried that mark. His mind froze. The barracks went silent as Hale continued his inspection, walking along the rows of recruits. The usual energy, the nervous chatter, the occasional grunt of frustration, vanished under his gaze. Even without speaking, his presence was commanding. Yet it wasn't his authority that held him still. It was the recruit herself. Lena's eyes met his briefly. Calm, unwavering, unafraid. There was a certainty there that unsettled him. He had seen confidence before, sure, but this was different. This was honed, almost predatory. She carried a weight, an experience that wasn't visible on her record or to anyone else. Hale had led men into battle, had commanded soldiers, SEALs, and Rangers alike, but he had never seen this combination of silence, control, and danger in someone barely 18. Whispers began to spread among the other recruits again. This was unusual, odd, the kind of anomaly that sparked rumor and fascination. "Do you think she's even a recruit? Maybe she's special ops. Why would a SEAL be here?" Hale ignored the whispers, but they only confirmed the strange pull she had over the room. Something about her was magnetic. Even the instructors, hardened by years of shaping raw recruits into soldiers, slowed their instruction, their eyes flicking to Lena as though checking for a hidden hazard. Later in the barracks, Lena remained on her bunk, methodically field-stripping her rifle, the sound of metal clicking softly against the wooden floor. Every movement had purpose. Every motion had been drilled into muscle memory. Around her, recruits fumbled with weapons, muttering under their breaths, yet she worked silently, methodically, with the precision of someone who had seen battle more times than most could imagine. Hale's aides had caught up with him by then, providing cursory briefings about the recruits. Their discussions became background noise to him. He couldn't stop staring at her scars, at the faint trident peeking beneath her sleeve, at the calm focus in her eyes. He knew that mark, knew what it meant. Only one female SEAL had ever survived the brutal, almost mythic selection process in recent history. Yet here she was, wearing the uniform of a recruit, listed as someone with no prior experience. Questions began piling up in Hale's mind. How had she survived? Why was she back here in this role, listed as a mere recruit? What had she endured in those years of silence and secrecy? He had faced firestorms before. He had faced insurgents, ambushes, and bureaucratic nightmares, but nothing like this. This was a mystery wrapped in scars, in silence, in the aura of someone who had already been through hell and returned to tell no one. The morning wore on. The heat pressed down harder and the recruits continued their drills, yet Hale's attention never wavered. He watched her, analyzing every twitch, every motion, every exhalation. The quiet recruit wasn't ordinary. That much was certain. Something extraordinary, dangerous, and profoundly skilled stood before him, and he knew instinctively that nothing in the coming days or months would be ordinary again. And as Lena finished cleaning her rifle, rolled up her sleeves, and adjusted her posture with that silent confidence, Hale went completely silent. He had seen a lot in his career, but the story written in those scars, the tattoo beneath her sleeve, the calm precision of her movements, told him one thing clearly. This recruit had secrets the military had tried to bury. And now she had returned. The barracks were quiet now, the kind of silence that felt heavier than any battlefield Hale had ever faced. He couldn't stop staring at Lena Mercer. She was kneeling on her bunk, sleeves rolled high, rifle gleaming in the afternoon sun, hands moving with effortless precision. Every motion seemed rehearsed but natural, the kind of precision that only came from countless hours under extreme stress, combat stress. Hale's aide cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, the recruits are." "Quiet," Hale interrupted. His eyes never left Lena. There was something in the way she moved, the way she breathed, that set her apart. Not just skill, but discipline, patience, and control. The kind of control only those who had seen war up close could muster. Hale had commanded soldiers, SEALs, Rangers, but this was different. He approached her slowly, boots echoing against the barracks floor. Lena didn't flinch, didn't glance up unnecessarily. She continued to disassemble and clean her rifle, oiling the barrel with careful, measured strokes. Hale stopped a few feet away, eyes locked on the thin, jagged scars that ran along her forearms. Rope burns, burn marks, old surgical scars, combat marks. No rookie should have those. "Private Mercer," Hale said, voice low, steady, commanding. "Your hands, these scars, training accidents." Lena finally looked up, calm, eyes steady. "Sir, just combat training, mostly, rope courses, live fire drills." Her voice was even, controlled, nothing betrayed hesitation. She didn't lie, but she didn't explain either. Hale's gut twisted. He'd seen hundreds of soldiers in battle. He recognized those scars. Those weren't rookie marks. They were survival marks. His gaze traveled upward, catching the faint ink just visible beneath her sleeve. A trident. Hale froze. His pulse quickened. Only one in the history of female SEALs had survived the hellish selection process necessary to earn that symbol. The other instructors and recruits didn't notice, but Hale's mind raced. That tattoo wasn't decoration. It was identity, proof of elite training, proof of survival. And yet here she was, officially listed as a recruit. Whispers began to swirl across the room. Recruits noticed the pause, the tension. Something unspoken hung in the air. "Do you see it?" one recruit whispered to another. "Why would a SEAL be here, listed as a recruit?" The murmurs spread quietly, curiosity laced with unease. Most hadn't seen the trident before, but even to the untrained eye, there was something about Lena, her poise, her quiet authority, that set her apart. The instructors exchanged glances. Even they, hardened by years of shaping recruits into soldiers, slowed their movements. They too felt the pull, the unspoken aura surrounding her. Hale's mind replayed the impossible. Lena had survived missions that had been erased from history, declared dead in classified files, her existence hidden even from her own military branch. How? Why was she here in the role of a recruit? He had faced insurgents, ambushes, political pressure, and covert operations, but nothing like this. This was a ghost of history, a living enigma, kneeling calmly on a bunk in Fort Bragg. The general's aides exchanged worried glances. Hale didn't respond, didn't speak. He simply observed, piecing together the impossible puzzle. He recalled years ago signing casualty reports for Black Ops missions with no public acknowledgement. Operations gone wrong. Bodies unrecovered. Officially erased. And yet, Lena Mercer was here, alive, walking among the living, the scars on her arms and the tattoo on her shoulder silently screaming the truth. Time seemed to stretch. Hale's gaze never wavered. Lena met it without flinching, perfectly steady, perfectly composed. She wasn't afraid. Not of him, not of the uniform, not of the rank, not of the whispers. The audacity, or perhaps the confidence born of necessity, struck him with force. He remembered the reports. One mission 3 years prior, covert insertion behind enemy lines, team lost, no extraction, officially KIA, no survivors, all evidence erased. Every log, every message, every photograph gone. Everyone had assumed her dead. Yet here she was, calm, collected, cleaning her rifle like it was nothing extraordinary. The universe, Hale realized, had just thrown him a puzzle he wasn't prepared to solve. And then a sudden thought struck him, heavy and chilling. If she had survived, why hadn't she come forward sooner? Why appear now, in a role beneath her experience listed as a recruit? What mission had she returned from? And why hadn't the Pentagon recognized her? He took a step closer. "Private, why are you here?" His voice was low, measured, yet commanding enough to hold her attention. She paused just for a moment and responded evenly. "Sir, assigned here. Administrative reassignment. Waiting orders." Hale's eyebrows narrowed. The explanation didn't add up. Only one possibility remained. She was here for a reason, a mission only she could carry out now. Her silence was her weapon. Her scars were proof. And the trident marked her as someone capable of almost anything. The murmurs around them grew louder, curiosity turning into speculation. "She's too calm, too precise. She's hiding something. Who even is she?" Hale ignored the whispers. He studied her quietly, noting the subtle movements, how her fingers flexed, how her back straightened instinctively, how her breathing was even despite the stifling heat. This was no ordinary recruit. This was someone forged in fire, someone who had survived the impossible, someone the military had officially written off years ago. The room held its breath. Everyone waited. Something in the air was different. Tension thickened. Hale felt it deep in his gut. This wasn't just a recruit. This was a living, breathing secret, a weapon wrapped in calm, a survivor walking in silence among rookies. And as Lena finished reassembling her rifle, sliding the bolt back with flawless precision, Hale went completely silent. Not because he was unsure of what to say, but because he suddenly understood the truth. She wasn't a recruit. She was a story buried in shadows, a mission erased from history. And the moment he realized it, a chill ran through him. The quiet recruit kneeling calmly on her bunk had just reminded him of one unshakable fact. Some truths can't stay hidden forever. Night had fallen over Fort Bragg, cloaking the sprawling base in darkness. Inside his private office, General Marcus Hale sat behind his desk, staring at the blinking cursor on the computer screen. He hesitated for a moment, then typed in Lena Mercer's file number. The results loaded, but nothing was there. Empty. Blank. 2 months enlisted. No prior deployments. No commendations. No record of elite training. No record of anything except the most mundane paperwork a recruit would carry. Yet the scars on her forearms and the faint seal trident tattoo told another story entirely. Hale leaned back, exhaling slowly. Something didn't add up. He picked up the secure phone on his desk. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the disbelief rising in his chest. One call, just one, to a contact within United States Special Operations Command, someone who handled classified records that even he didn't normally access. "This is General Hale," he said. "I need confirmation. Petty Officer Lena Mercer, status." There was a long pause on the other end. Then finally, "She doesn't exist." Hale's blood ran cold. "Explain." "She was declared KIA 3 years ago during a Black Ops mission. All team members lost. No bodies recovered. Officially, she's dead. Any records of her survival have been purged. Only top-level clearance knows the details." Hale stared at the phone, the weight of her reality settling like a stone in his stomach. He recalled signing the casualty reports, folded flags delivered to grieving families, the official letters. Every signature he had pressed to paper now seemed like a lie, like a mask covering the truth. He pulled up old classified documents from his personal archives, the files that had been carefully hidden from all but a handful of officials. Images of destroyed equipment, satellite coordinates of hostile territory, radio logs that had gone dead, everything pointed to a failed mission. Every man on the team had been marked as dead, all erased. Except now, standing in the barracks, was the impossible survivor. Hale's mind raced, trying to reconcile the impossible. Why had Lena returned? Why now? Why pose as a recruit when she had already survived hell itself? What mission had she carried out that the government wanted buried? The answer was almost too terrifying to consider. Her return wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. Someone wanted her back here. Perhaps to complete a mission the Pentagon had quietly assigned, or perhaps she was here to deliver judgment. He thought back to the scars, each one a story of endurance. Rope burns, surgical scars, shrapnel wounds, marks that spoke of missions no official record could acknowledge. Hale realized that Lena had endured horrors beyond even the most extreme SEAL selection, and had survived where others had died. She carried experience, knowledge, and rage carefully controlled behind a calm, unreadable facade. Hale rubbed his temples. The implications were staggering. The woman kneeling in the barracks was not a recruit. She was a weapon, a ghost from a classified past, and she had come home. He remembered the trident again. Only the most elite SEALs earned it. Only those who survived the brutal selection process and completed countless high-risk operations. One female SEAL had ever completed the selection in recent history, Lena Mercer. She had been officially dead for 3 years. And yet she stood among the living, smiling faintly, her hands steady, her body scarred, her eyes full of resolve. Hale's phone buzzed again. Another secure line, a warning. "General, be careful, she's dangerous. She's not supposed to exist, and her return, it could create waves you aren't ready for." He set the phone down, tension tightening around his chest. Dangerous. Yes, but Hale knew better than anyone that Lena Mercer had always been dangerous in the most controlled, precise way. She wasn't a reckless fighter. She was a calculated, deadly force, trained to anticipate every move, survive every trap, and outthink every opponent. She carried the truth, and with it, the power to shake the military to its core. Hale sat back and recalled the original mission. A covert insertion behind hostile lines, extraction denied, team cut off. Months of brutal fighting, capture, torture, imprisonment, and then somehow survival. Months of recovery in secrecy, months of erasure. The Pentagon had buried her alive on paper, stripped of awards, stripped of rank, stripped of identity. She had returned quietly to the system as a recruit, blending in under the radar. He leaned forward, scanning the files again. The falsified reports, the erased communications, the coordinates of the denied extraction, all pointed to one ugly reality. Lena's team had been abandoned deliberately, sacrificed, and now she had returned to confront it. Hale realized he was starring at more than a recruit. He was starring at a reckoning. She had not returned for medals. She had not returned for recognition. She had returned for justice, for the fallen men and women whose deaths had been hidden. The general felt a mixture of fear and admiration. Fear for what she could do if provoked, and admiration for the calm precision with which she carried herself. He thought back to the barracks, to the whispered murmurs of other recruits. They had no idea what stood among them. She was a living ghost, a story erased, a weapon disguised in silence. Hale finally stood, packing the office. He considered his next move carefully. This was bigger than the barracks, bigger than Fort Bragg. This was a question of truth, secrecy, loyalty, and justice, and the answer rested in the hands and scars of the quiet recruit. The night stretched on, and Hale could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. Every memory of that erased mission, every folded flag, every falsified document came rushing back. Lena Mercer had survived what no one else had, and now she was here, calm, collected, and waiting for him to recognize it. He exhaled, finally reaching a decision. He would need to confront her, privately, carefully. But first he would gather every scrap of information, every hidden report, every erased record. He needed the truth. And she, silent, scarred, unstoppable, would hold the key. Somewhere in the shadows of Fort Bragg, a recruit, no, a ghost, cleaned her weapon, oblivious to the storm she had already set in motion. And Hale knew in the deepest part of his gut that nothing in his long career would ever be the same again. The sun had long vanished behind the horizon, leaving Fort Bragg cloaked in darkness, punctuated only by dim lights along the barracks. Inside the general's office, Hale sat alone, reviewing maps, satellite imagery, and reports of a mission long erased. His mind kept returning to Lena Mercer. The scars on her arms, the trident tattoo, the calm precision with which she moved, none of it belonged to a recruit. He closed his eyes, letting the memory of that mission from 3 years prior replay in his mind. Lena had been deployed on a classified insertion, deep behind enemy lines. No flag, no recognition. The Pentagon had assigned the operation under absolute secrecy, and the team knew there would be no public acknowledgement if things went wrong. The first hours of the insertion had gone as planned. The team moved under the cover of night, silent and efficient. Lena led the point, navigating through treacherous terrain with a tactical eye honed from countless drills and missions. Her team trusted her implicitly, and for good reason. She had earned that trust in blood and fire. But the extraction plan was sabotaged. Orders had been changed without their knowledge. The bird that should have lifted them from hostile territory never arrived. One by one, her teammates fell in ambushes, explosions, and gunfire. Lena fought with a ferocity that could only come from necessity, the desperate will to survive, and the burden of leading a team that had no way out. She was captured, tortured, held in isolation. Months passed. Every day tested her body, her mind, her limits. Most would have broken, revealed secrets, or succumbed to despair. Not Lena. She adapted, endured, survived. Pain became routine. Hunger became routine. Fear became fuel. Every scar along her arms told a story of a day she refused to die. Every mark was proof of survival against impossible odds. Eventually, she escaped. Alone, unarmed, and hunted, she made her way back to U.S. soil. But even returning home was complicated. The mission had been classified to the point of erasure. Officially, she had died. Any recognition, medals, or record of her service had been buried. Her existence was denied by the very institution she had served. For months she waited, observed, recovered, built a plan. Then she returned to the system under the guise of a recruit, blending in among those who had no idea of what she had endured, what she had survived, or what she had witnessed. Hale shook his head. The sheer audacity, the quiet patience, it was extraordinary. This woman, officially erased from history, had returned with a calm that defied reason. Her presence wasn't rebellion, it was strategy. A force contained within silence, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The general's mind flicked back to the scars again. Rope burns from rappelling into hostile territory. Shrapnel scars from ambushes. Old surgical lines. healed but permanent reminders of wounds sustained in the field. She carried her mission on her body. Every motion she made, every rifle click, every breath, it spoke of experience far beyond any recruit's capacity. Hale realized that Lena's return wasn't just symbolic. She carried evidence of betrayal. Flight logs, erased communications, denied extraction orders, all pointing to one terrible truth. Her team hadn't been lost in combat by accident. They had been abandoned. The decision had been deliberate, and the higher-ups responsible for that choice had moved on, promoted, shielded by bureaucracy and secrecy. He felt a pang of guilt. He had signed the casualty reports, delivered the folded flags. He had trusted the chain of command. And now, staring at the files and remembering her face in the barracks, he understood that the truth had been buried under layers of deceit. Lena had survived, and now she was back, not for medals, not for recognition, but for justice. A knock at the door broke Hale's thoughts. One of his aides handed him a sealed envelope, unmarked, but carrying a weight that suggested urgency. Inside were more documents, satellite photos of the original operation site, encrypted communications recovered from field logs, and partial accounts of enemy positions. The extraction had been denied, deliberately. The mission's failure was not an accident. And Lena's survival now represented a threat, quiet but potent, to anyone who had covered up the truth. Hale exhaled slowly. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the shadows longer, the weight of the past pressing down. He thought about the recruits outside, oblivious to the storm forming within their barracks. None of them would understand. None of them could imagine the magnitude of what the quiet recruit had endured. Outside, the base remained calm, but Hale knew that calm was fragile. Lena Mercer was no ordinary recruit. She was a living weapon, a ghost of classified missions erased from history, walking among innocents. Her scars were her credentials. Her silence was her strategy. And now she had chosen to step back into the world that had tried to erase her. He studied her quietly in his memory, picturing the scene from the morning, the careful cleaning of her rifle, the controlled, deliberate movements, the way she rolled up her sleeves and revealed just enough to hint at her true identity. Hale felt a chill run down his spine. This was a soldier who had survived death multiple times, returned home to face an institution that had denied her, and now moved among new recruits, waiting for the moment when the truth would be unavoidable. And Hale understood finally that the quiet recruit in front of him wasn't a student. She wasn't here to learn. She was here to demand recognition, accountability, and justice for herself and for the team that had been sacrificed. And he, the general who had signed the papers declaring her dead, was now caught in the middle. Somewhere deep in the shadows of the base, Lena Mercer's fingers traced the edges of her rifle, scars faintly visible, the trident barely peeking from under her sleeve. She was calm, focused, patient. She knew what had to be done, and soon the world around her would understand the truth she carried: survival, resilience, and the courage to face those who had tried to erase her history. The night deepened, wrapping the base in silence, but Hale couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. One woman, a recruit in name only, held the power to expose lies, punish betrayal, and reclaim history. And the shadows whispered a single, undeniable fact: the quiet recruit had become the storm. The following morning, Fort Bragg was already alive with the sounds of drills, shouted commands, and the clatter of boots across the parade ground. Yet inside General Marcus Hale's office, a different kind of tension hung in the air, thick, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Lena Mercer sat across from him, her posture immaculate, her gaze steady, revealing nothing, yet conveying everything. The faint scars along her forearms were visible now under the rolled sleeves of her uniform. The trident tattoo peeked subtly, a reminder of her true identity, a Navy SEAL whose existence had been officially erased. Hale's fingers tapped against the polished surface of his desk. He had spent hours reviewing every file, every classified document, every satellite image and encrypted communication tied to Lena's mission. Now, the questions came flooding in, and they demanded answers. He leaned forward, his piercing eyes locking on hers. "Petty Officer Mercer," he began, voice low and firm, "explain to me why you are here. Why are you serving as a recruit when you've already completed missions far beyond this training program? Why disguise yourself?" Lena didn't blink. She remained calm, collected, the very image of controlled precision. "Sir," she said, her voice quiet but commanding, "I am here because my team didn't come home. I've carried the proof of what happened to them, and now I intend to make sure someone is held accountable." Hale exhaled, leaning back slightly. The weight of her words hung in the air, heavier than any battlefield he had faced. "Explain." Her hands moved subtly, reaching for a folder she had kept under her seat. She placed it on the desk, sliding it toward him with deliberate care. Hale opened it, eyes widening as he scanned the contents: flight logs, falsified extraction orders, communications erased from official records, coordinates of denied extraction points, names of high-ranking officials who had ignored their responsibility. Each piece of paper told a story of deliberate betrayal, deception, and abandonment. Hale's mind raced, his pulse quickened. The gravity of the evidence was staggering. Lena's team hadn't been casualties of circumstance, they had been sacrificed, deliberately, and now she held the proof in her hands. "You brought this back," he said slowly, barely above a whisper. "You could destroy careers, expose secrets, entire chains of command. Why risk everything?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Because silence would dishonor them. Because truth matters more than bureaucracy. Because I survived when they didn't, and I cannot allow their deaths to be hidden any longer." The office seemed smaller suddenly, the shadows longer, the weight of history pressing down on them both. Hale realized he was witnessing a reckoning. The quiet recruit, kneeling calmly on her bunk, cleaning her rifle with precision, was no longer just a survivor. She was a force, a ghost from a classified mission erased from history, walking among the living, ready to confront those who had buried the truth. Hale's eyes flicked over the files again. Flight logs deliberately erased, extraction denied, mission success hidden. Everyone responsible now occupied positions of power. If these documents surfaced, the ramifications would ripple across the Pentagon. Officials would be implicated, careers destroyed, political fallout inevitable. The truth was explosive, and Lena held it. "You're risking more than your life," Hale said, his voice tight. "You're risking the military itself. Are you prepared for what might happen if these names go public?" Lena's expression softened slightly, almost imperceptibly. "I don't fear the institution, sir. I fear dishonor, lies, and betrayal. The people who made decisions that cost lives must be held accountable. That's all." Hale leaned back, absorbing her words. He had faced death in every form: insurgents, ambushes, explosives. But never had he faced something like this, a survivor wielding truth as a weapon. She didn't need to fire a gun to command power. Her calm, her scars, her controlled presence, those were her tools. The evidence she carried was secondary. Her will and resolve were primary. He studied her for a long moment. He realized then that the general's role had shifted. No longer merely a commander, he had become a gatekeeper between a buried truth and its inevitable revelation. He could protect the institution, bury her story again, and maintain appearances. Or he could allow her to bring the buried mission, and the betrayal surrounding it, into the light. Finally, Hale's voice was quiet but firm. "I understand, petty officer. I see what you've endured, and I see what you demand, but you must understand, if this goes public, it will not be just a revelation. It will be a storm. Powerful people, people higher than us, will resist. They will threaten, attempt to suppress, and question every fact. Are you ready for that?" Lena's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "I've already survived worse, sir, and I didn't come back to hide. I came back to honor them. That's enough." Hale nodded slowly, the gravity of the moment settling on both of them. He realized she wasn't here to rebuild her career, to seek accolades, or to chase recognition. She was here for justice, and she carried a quiet, deadly force behind her calm exterior. He had witnessed fear, courage, strategy, and raw survival in countless soldiers. But Lena Mercer was unique. She had survived death itself, returned to face the institution that had buried her, and now stood ready to challenge its secrets. Outside the office, the world continued as usual. Recruits drilled. Instructors barked commands. The sun rose over the sprawling base, highlighting the uniform lines of training grounds. But inside, time seemed to pause. In that office, history had shifted. The quiet recruit had revealed herself, not with violence but with truth. The weight of the past, the betrayal of the lost team, and the undeniable evidence of deliberate abandonment now rested in the hands of the general, and in the calm, unflinching gaze of Lena Mercer. The tension in the room was palpable. Hale understood the stakes. Careers, lives, and secrets hung in the balance. One wrong move, one misstep, could ignite a political and military storm the likes of which he had never faced. And yet Lena remained calm, controlled, unshakable. Her scars, her gaze, and her trident tattoo told him everything he needed to know. She was unstoppable. She had endured worse than any threat the Pentagon could pose. Hale exhaled, leaning back in his chair. The storm had begun, not with explosions, not with gunfire, but quietly, deliberately in a small office between a general and a recruit who was anything but ordinary. And Hale knew, deep in his gut, that nothing in the coming weeks would remain the same. Fort Bragg hummed with routine activity, but inside the secure offices of General Marcus Hale, routine was gone. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting harsh stripes across a war room cluttered with maps, encrypted files, and printed communications. Hale's eyes scanned the documents once more, each page confirming the same impossible truth. Lena Mercer's mission had been deliberately sabotaged, her team abandoned, and the official records falsified. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. Each file he reviewed added weight to the reality he now faced. Exposing the truth would shatter careers, topple powerful officials, and shake the Pentagon. And yet, staring across the room at Lena Mercer, sitting calmly with her trident tattoo barely visible beneath her rolled sleeves, Hale realized that the truth could not remain buried. "She has the proof," Hale murmured almost to himself, "and she will not be silenced." Hale had begun a discreet investigation, quietly contacting secure channels within United States Special Operations Command. Every inquiry revealed layers of cover-up. Flight logs had been altered, extraction orders erased, and communications scrubbed. Even satellite imagery had been corrected to suggest the mission area had been unoccupied. Whoever had orchestrated the betrayal had planned meticulously, yet they had not anticipated Lena surviving. Lena's calm precision unnerved him. She didn't need to raise her voice to assert power. Each motion, each glance, each measured pause carried authority born of experience beyond comprehension. She had endured torture, combat, and erasure from history, and returned with the singular purpose of reclaiming the truth. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. One of Hale's aides entered, carrying a discreet envelope marked Top Secret, Eyes Only. "Sir," the aide whispered, "additional intelligence has arrived. It concerns the original mission and higher-level involvement." Hale opened the envelope carefully. Inside were encrypted communications, emails between high-ranking officials, and flight logs showing deliberate denial of extraction orders. Names he recognized immediately, men and women long promoted, shielded from scrutiny, and insulated by bureaucratic layers. The evidence was damning. If exposed, these individuals would face consequences that could reach the highest levels of government. Hale's mind raced. How to proceed? Revealing the truth could ignite political chaos, yet suppressing it would dishonor Lena's team and betray her courage. And Lena herself was patient but unrelenting. She had survived the impossible. She would survive political pushback as well. "Sir," the aide said nervously, "there are warnings, subtle but clear. Some officials have noticed your inquiries. They're concerned." Hale exhaled slowly. Let them be concerned. This is no longer about convenience or politics. This is about accountability, and Lena Mercer will have it." He returned his attention to the trident-clad recruit. Lena's eyes met his, calm, focused, unwavering. Hale realized then that she did not seek revenge. She sought justice, and nothing, threats, bureaucracy, or secrecy would sway her. Her mission had been stolen, her survival erased, and her team abandoned. Now she held the power to restore the record. Outside the secure office, life on the base continued as usual. Recruits drilled in the sun, oblivious to the political storm brewing within the walls. But Hale knew that calm was fragile. Lena Mercer was a force of nature, and the evidence she carried was a spark. Once unleashed, it could ignite a firestorm. As the morning wore on, Hale and Lena worked through the files together. She pointed out subtle inconsistencies, discrepancies that revealed intentional cover-ups. Each detail brought clarity and danger. Someone had orchestrated the betrayal, and now they would fight to protect themselves. Hale realized they were racing against not just time, but powerful adversaries who would not hesitate to act if threatened. And yet Lena remained composed. Her body carried the history of survival, each scar a testament to endurance. Her mind was sharp, methodical, and unyielding. Hale found himself both admiring and fearing her. She didn't need weapons to be dangerous. The combination of experience, patience, and undeniable proof made her unstoppable. He thought about the implications. Exposing the falsified records would vindicate her and her fallen teammates. But it would also expose those who had betrayed them, threatening high-ranking officials and political figures. The Pentagon could resist, suppress, or spin the narrative, but Lena had the facts, and facts, once revealed, could not be ignored. Hale finally spoke, his voice low but resolute. "Petty officer, we are stepping into dangerous territory. People at levels far above this base will resist. They will try to discredit, intimidate, or block us. Are you prepared for that?" Lena's gaze didn't falter. "Sir," she replied evenly, "I've survived what no one else could endure. I am prepared for this. I didn't come back for medals or recognition. I came back to honor my team and to expose the truth. That is enough." Hale nodded slowly, the weight of responsibility pressing on him. She was right. The mission, the betrayal, the erasure, these facts demanded exposure. Bureaucracy and politics were no match for determination forged in combat. Lena had endured isolation, torture, and abandonment. She had survived against impossible odds. Now, the fight was no longer on the battlefield. It was within the very heart of the military establishment. Hale looked at her once more. The quiet recruit was no longer a mystery. She was a reckoning. And the investigation they had begun would shake the foundations of everything the Pentagon had tried to protect. Lena had survived erasure, secrecy, and betrayal, and nothing would stop her from reclaiming justice for the fallen. Outside the office, the sun continued its climb, oblivious to the storm building in the shadows. But Hale knew that calm was an illusion. Lena Mercer, the recruit who was no recruit, held the power to expose lies, punish betrayal, and honor those who had been abandoned. And the shadows whispered the same truth Hale now understood. The quiet recruit had become an unstoppable force, and the investigation had only just begun. The Pentagon was quiet in the early morning, the kind of eerie calm that made the corridors feel larger, the shadows longer. Inside a classified briefing room, General Marcus Hale sat at a polished table, documents spread before him, the weight of every life, every betrayal, pressing down like a storm about to break. Across from him, Lena Mercer remained calm, her posture perfect, her hands resting lightly on the table. The scars along her forearms were visible now, a silent testament to the impossible mission she had survived. Her trident tattoo peeked subtly beneath her sleeve, a reminder of the elite force she represented, a force officially erased from history. Around the room, officials from multiple branches of the military had gathered, faces familiar yet wary, some stiff with protocol, others tight with suspicion. Air of authority clashed with the unspoken tension. Everyone here sensed that something monumental had arrived, and that something wore the guise of a quiet recruit. Hale stood, clearing his throat, breaking the silence that had grown thick and suffocating. "This meeting is not routine," he began. "We are here to address serious discrepancies in the records of a Black Ops mission 3 years ago. Evidence has emerged, and it cannot be ignored." Heads shifted, whispers spreading subtly across the table. Eyes darted toward Lena, who remained still, composed, her calm a stark contrast to the nervous energy in the room. Hale caught glimpses of fear, curiosity, and calculation in those faces. He gestured to the folder in front of him. "Flight logs, extraction orders, and communications have been reviewed. Our initial findings confirm deliberate sabotage and the abandonment of Petty Officer Mercer's team. The consequences of this revelation are severe. Those responsible occupy high-ranking positions. Accountability is now unavoidable." Gasps and murmurs echoed through the room. Some leaned back, others exchanged glances as if searching for a hidden trap. Hale remained stern, unflinching, but his eyes never left Lena. He knew her presence was destabilizing. This was no ordinary briefing. Finally, one senior officer cleared his throat. "General Hale, are you suggesting, what exactly, that a team was deliberately sacrificed?" Lena spoke, voice steady and commanding, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Yes, my team was abandoned. The mission records were falsified to protect those responsible. I survived while they did not. I have brought the evidence to ensure the truth is known and justice is served." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Every eye in the room shifted between her and the general. The weight of her words settled like a storm cloud. Hale could feel the tension radiating through the room, the unspoken understanding that the ramifications of this revelation would ripple through the military hierarchy and beyond. A senior Pentagon official leaned forward, voice sharp. "Petty Officer Mercer, these allegations, do you have proof?" Lena placed the folder on the table and slid it toward the official. "Every flight log, every deleted communication, every order denying extraction, all verifiable. Nothing here is fabricated. You can cross-reference everything through secure channels." The official's hand hovered over the folder, hesitating. He glanced at the others. "If this is accurate, the consequences are catastrophic. Careers, reputations, the chain of command. It will shake the institution." Hale nodded solemnly. "I am aware, but the cost of silence is higher. The truth cannot be ignored. The fallen deserve recognition, and those responsible must be held accountable." A young officer whispered to a colleague, "Who is she, really?" "She's not a recruit," the other replied softly. "She survived everything." Meanwhile, Lena's eyes scanned the room, calculating, patient. Her calm presence held more weight than any rank or authority. She didn't need to threaten. Her scars, her trident tattoo, and the undeniable evidence carried the authority. Hale realized then that she was the storm itself, and the officials in the room were only waiting for it to arrive. The room seemed to hold its breath. Some of the officers shifted uncomfortably, realizing that their previous decisions and their silence could be exposed. They were caught between loyalty to hierarchy and the undeniable truth presented by someone officially erased from history. Hale spoke again, his voice steady but urgent. "We have a responsibility. This is not about politics. This is about accountability, integrity, and honor. We cannot hide from the truth any longer." A brief silence followed. Then one officer spoke, voice tight with fear and calculation. "General, we need to proceed cautiously. There are powerful individuals involved. Some may resist any investigation. They may attempt suppression, discredit, or intimidation." Lena's gaze didn't falter. "I've survived worse. Threats, politics, and bureaucracy are trivial compared to what I endured behind enemy lines. My team deserves justice, and I intend to ensure it is delivered." Hale felt the weight of history settle upon him. This was more than a mission, more than a betrayal. This was a reckoning, and the quiet recruit before him, kneeling calmly on her bunk months ago and cleaning her rifle with surgical precision, was now the agent of that reckoning. He looked around the room. Every official was caught between fear and recognition. The storm had arrived. Lena Mercer had walked into the Pentagon carrying the truth, and the institution had no choice but to confront it. Outside, the corridors of power were oblivious. Military personnel carried out their routines, unaware that the walls they passed through were now shadowed with scandal and danger. But inside that room, history was shifting. Names, decisions, and lives would be scrutinized, exposed, and forever changed. Hale knew one thing clearly. Silence was no longer an option. The quiet recruit had become a force that could not be ignored, her scars a testament, her evidence undeniable, and her calm a warning to those who had underestimated her. And in the shadows, waiting patiently, Lena Mercer prepared for the inevitable storm, knowing that once the truth was unleashed, nothing would remain the same. The morning light filtered through the Pentagon windows, sharp and bright, illuminating the tension thick in the air. General Marcus Hale sat at the head of the conference table, Lena Mercer beside him, both calm yet resolute. Around them, high-ranking officials fidgeted nervously, aware that this meeting could rewrite the history of a mission long buried. Hale began, his voice steady, commanding attention. "We have reviewed all evidence. The flight logs, communications, and extraction orders point to deliberate decisions that led to the loss of Petty Officer Mercer's team. The implications are severe, and accountability is necessary." The room was silent except for the occasional rustle of papers. Officials avoided eye contact, their composed exteriors masking unease. Lena's presence was magnetic. Her scars, her trident, and the calm precision in her demeanor communicated authority without a word. An admiral cleared his throat, attempting to regain control. "General, are we prepared for the consequences? These allegations could topple careers, spark political backlash, even jeopardize national security perceptions." Lena spoke, voice firm and unwavering. "Sir, security is important, but it is not more important than truth. My team's lives were sacrificed, erased from history, and their families denied closure. That injustice must be corrected. Those responsible will be held accountable." The officials exchanged tense glances. Hale noticed that some were white-faced, realizing the weight of the evidence and Lena's undeniable credibility. She had survived missions no one else had. She had endured torture, isolation, and abandonment, and now she held proof that could no longer be ignored. A senior official leaned forward, voice trembling. "Petty Officer Mercer, if your evidence is verified, those responsible—" "They will face justice," Lena interrupted, her tone calm but absolute. "I am not here for revenge. I am here for accountability. The mission's failures must be acknowledged and my team honored." Hale's eyes softened slightly. He had watched countless soldiers face death, pain, and loss, but he had never witnessed a survivor carry authority so effortlessly. Lena's calm was not weakness. It was unshakable power, and it had shifted the room's energy entirely. He continued, "We will proceed carefully but decisively. This investigation will reach every level necessary. No one is beyond scrutiny. No record can remain hidden. The facts you've brought are irrefutable." Lena nodded slightly, her gaze unwavering. She had endured erasure by the Pentagon itself, yet now she commanded respect simply by being herself, calm, composed, and backed by undeniable evidence. Hale realized the magnitude of her accomplishment. She had turned silence into power, scars into authority, and truth into a weapon. The investigation began immediately. Officials at the Pentagon scrambled, checking logs, verifying communications, and cross-referencing Lena's evidence with internal archives. Within hours, inconsistencies that had gone unnoticed or deliberately hidden were laid bare. Names of high-ranking officers responsible for denying extraction orders surfaced. Decisions that had cost lives were traced with precision. By midday, the weight of accountability began to shift. Internal investigations were launched. Resignations and suspensions were quietly filed. Those who had attempted to hide mistakes now faced consequences for their actions. Lena's patience, precision, and undeniable proof had created a ripple that no bureaucratic shield could withstand. Outside, Fort Bragg continued its routines. Recruits drilled, unaware of the political storm Lena had quietly ignited. But Hale watched, knowing that the quiet recruit, the one who had seemed so ordinary months ago, had already changed history. She had reclaimed her story and demanded justice for her team. Hale turned to her, voice low but filled with respect. "You've done more than I could have imagined, not just surviving but reshaping the truth. History will remember this petty officer." Lena's lips curved into a faint smile, almost imperceptible. "Sir, I didn't survive for recognition. I survived for them, the team that never made it home. That's enough." Hale nodded. He understood completely. The trident on her shoulder was more than a mark of elite training. It was a symbol of endurance, courage, and justice. The scars along her arms were proof that she had endured the impossible. Now, the world would see her strength, not just in survival, but in reclaiming truth and demanding accountability. As the day drew on, the ripple effect continued. Official records were corrected. Awards were posthumously given to Lena's team. Families received acknowledgement for the first time. The Pentagon, shaken but orderly, faced the consequences of hidden decisions. Lena's evidence had forced transparency where there had been erasure. Later, Hale walked with Lena back toward Fort Bragg's training grounds. The sun set behind the sprawling base, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Lena adjusted her uniform, calm and precise, yet the weight of what had been accomplished seemed almost tangible. "You've changed everything," Hale said quietly. "Not just here but across the system. Few could do what you've done." Lena glanced at him briefly. "Sir, I survived. I returned. That's what mattered. The rest follows naturally." They reached the edge of the training ground where recruits were finishing drills. Lena paused, watching them move, disciplined and eager. She had once been among them, training to survive. Now she stood as a testament to endurance, courage, and justice. She was no longer a recruit. She was a force of nature, a living reminder that truth could not be buried. Hale watched her, silent and reflective. The quiet recruit, erased by history, hardened by war, and patient as a storm, had reclaimed her narrative and forced accountability. He realized that for all the battles he had led, the campaigns he had commanded, and the enemies he had faced, none had been as challenging or consequential as witnessing the reckoning she had wrought. As night fell, the base settled into quiet. Lena Mercer, the recruit who was never just a recruit, stood at the edge of the training grounds, a survivor, a warrior, and a symbol. Scars visible, trident tattooed, eyes calm and resolute. She had survived death, endured erasure, and returned to demand justice. And in doing so, she had reminded the military and the world that some truths cannot be silenced. And with that, Lena Mercer vanished quietly into the shadows of the base, leaving behind a legacy of courage, endurance, and unwavering justice. The storm had passed, but its impact would be remembered forever.